The sunlight poured through the enormous glass windows, glinting off polished marble floors and golden fixtures, casting an almost magical glow across the office. Everything in the room spoke of wealth, success, and power. Yet, amid this luxury, a small figure moved quietly, almost unnoticed. Maria, a poor cleaning lady, carried her broom with care, her worn shoes whispering softly against the gleaming tiles. She had been working here for years, and though no one paid much attention to her, she had learned to observe everything. Today, however, was different. The billionaire, Mr. Anton Volkov, sat behind his massive mahogany desk, signing a stack of papers that could reshape lives. Maria had swept past this desk countless times, but something about the papers today made her pause. Curiosity turned into unease as she leaned closer, glancing at the fine print. Her heart sank. The contract was perfectly legal, but morally corrupt. It would strip workers of their rights, leaving hundreds struggling to survive while the company's profits soared. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her broom. She knew it wasn't her place to speak. She was just the cleaning lady, the invisible part of the machine, but something deep inside her stirred. She had seen the faces of people who depended on this company, the exhausted hands of workers, the anxious eyes of their families. Could she remain silent knowing what she knew? Taking a deep breath, she approached the desk. Her voice was barely above a whisper, fragile yet determined. "Sir, don't sign this," she murmured, her words hanging in the air like a fragile plea. Anton froze, pen hovering over the paper. He turned slowly, his sharp eyes narrowing in surprise. "What did you just say?" he asked, incredulous. A cleaning lady, someone who barely spoke to him outside of polite nods, had dared to interrupt him. Maria swallowed hard, keeping her gaze steady. It's not right. It will hurt people, many people. Please, don't sign it." Her voice shook, but her message was clear. For a moment, the office was silent, the only sound the soft tick of the antique clock on the wall. And in that pause, Anton realized something he hadn't felt in years, a tiny ripple of doubt, a spark of conscience ignited by someone who had nothing to gain and everything to lose. And in that instant, everything changed. Anton Volkov leaned back in his chair, staring at Maria with a mixture of disbelief and curiosity. The cleaning lady's words lingered in the air, soft yet powerful, like a quiet echo that refused to fade. He had spent decades building his empire, making deals that some called ruthless but necessary. And yet, here was a woman, unnoticed by most, daring to challenge him with nothing but honesty. "Why should I listen to you?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with suspicion. His sharp eyes scanned her face, looking for hesitation, fear, or the faintest hint of trickery. But all he saw was truth, pure, unflinching truth. Maria swallowed hard, gripping her broom tighter. She felt small and vulnerable, yet an inner strength pushed her forward. "Because this contract, it will hurt people. Real people, sir," she said softly. "People who work hard, who feed their families. This will make their lives harder. They're counting on the company to be fair, and it won't be if you sign this." Anton's brow furrowed. He had read the contract hundreds of times. Legally, it was flawless, profitable, smart. But Maria's words planted a seed of doubt, tiny but insistent. He thought of the countless workers whose faces blurred in his memory, employees who had greeted him politely, worked silently, and carried the weight of their families on tired shoulders. He had never really seen them. "Not like this. Do you understand what you're asking me?" he said finally, his voice softer now. "I could lose millions if I don't sign this. Are you asking me to ignore that?" Maria nodded, her eyes unwavering. "I'm asking you to do what's right. Not for money, not for power. For them. For everyone who doesn't have a voice." Anton sat in silence, his mind spinning. He remembered his own beginnings. A small, crowded apartment, days without enough to eat, nights spent dreaming of a better life. The same vulnerability, the same fear, had once been his. And now, decades later, he had the chance to make a different choice. The room seemed to shrink around him, the sunlight glinting off the desk like a spotlight on a moment of reckoning. The pen hovered over the paper, and Anton realized that this was more than a contract. It was a test of who he truly was, who he wanted to be. And for the first time in years, he felt something he hadn't expected. the stirring of his conscience, awakened by someone society might have considered invisible. Anton Volkov sat alone in his office, the bustle of the company muted beyond the glass walls. The words of the cleaning lady echoed in his mind, soft but relentless. Do what's right, for them, for everyone who doesn't have a voice. The office, usually a sanctuary of control and calculation, suddenly felt heavy with responsibility. He glanced down at the contract again, seeing not numbers and clauses, but faces, dozens of men and women whose lives would be torn apart if he pressed his pen to paper. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to feel the weight of his decisions. Every bold move, every deal he had celebrated as genius suddenly seemed smaller in comparison to the human cost. He recalled his own beginnings, the cramped apartment, the long nights when he worried about bills, the sting of hunger, and the burning desire to survive. He had clawed his way up from nothing, but now, with all the power in the world at his fingertips, he realized something he had long ignored. True power wasn't in money or influence, it was in choosing compassion over greed. Anton's hand hovered over the contract. The pen, so familiar, now felt foreign in his grasp. He read the clauses again, this time through the lens of morality rather than profit. Each line that had seemed clever before now twisted with cruelty. The deal wasn't just unfair, it was devastating. It would break families, steal hope, and leave scars that no compensation could ever heal. The silence in the office was profound, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner and the occasional distant footsteps in the hallway. Anton leaned back, closed his eyes, and let the realization settle deep in his chest. This wasn't a test of strategy, it was a test of character. And the answer, clear as day, was impossible to ignore. Finally, he opened his eyes, seeing the office differently now. It was no longer just a monument to success, but a place where lives could be changed, for better or worse. The cleaning lady had risked everything to whisper the truth to him, a truth he could no longer escape. And in that moment, a resolve crystallized inside him. He would not sign the contract. Not only that, he would find a way to protect the people it threatened. With a deep breath, he rose from his chair. The pen would stay down. A different choice would be made. One rooted not in profit, but in integrity, compassion, and the courage to do what was right. Anton Volkov called for a meeting in the main conference hall. His employees, accustomed to his stern efficiency and decisive authority, looked on with curiosity as he stood before them, the infamous contract in his hand. For a moment, there was silence, a collective holding of breath. What would he do? Sign and move forward as always, or make a decision that no one had expected? Everyone, Anton began, his voice steady but carrying a weight that was unusual for him. I have a choice to make, and it is not an easy one. I could proceed with this contract, as it benefits the company greatly. But I have realized something far more important than profit. He paused, letting his words sink in. The cleaning lady, Maria, stood quietly near the corner, broom in hand, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and hope. This was the moment she had whispered to him about, the moment where courage meets consequence. I will not sign this contract, Anton continued, his tone firm yet compassionate. Gasps spread across the room. Whispers began. Shock, disbelief, awe. Employees exchanged looks they had never dared to imagine. Their lives, their futures, had just been protected by a man whose decisions had always seemed untouchable. But we are not stopping there, Anton said, setting the contract down. We are going to create a new plan, one that benefits the workers fairly, protects their livelihoods, and ensures that no one suffers from greed or indifference. This company exists because of its people, and it is our responsibility to honor that. Maria blinked back tears. She had never imagined that a quiet whisper from someone as humble as herself could ignite such a monumental shift. Her courage, small and trembling at first, had planted the seed of change in a heart hardened by wealth and power. Employees began to clap softly at first, then louder, as hope spread like wildfire. Faces lit up, smiles blossomed, and a sense of community filled the room. Anton looked around, his gaze finally meeting Maria's. A small nod passed between them, a silent acknowledgement of bravery, morality, and the impact one person can make. In that moment, the office transformed. It was no longer just a place of business. It was a place where compassion mattered, where integrity had the power to triumph, and where even the humblest voice could be heard above the clamor of wealth and authority. And in that silence that followed, Maria realized something extraordinary. Sometimes, the smallest act of courage can create the largest wave of change. Word of Anton Volkov's decision spread quickly throughout the company, and soon, whispers traveled beyond the office walls. Employees shared the story with friends and family, telling of a billionaire who had chosen integrity over profit, inspired by a humble cleaning lady who had dared to speak the truth. The ripple of that single act of courage traveled far, igniting conversations in boardrooms, neighborhoods, and even media outlets. People everywhere marveled at how one small voice could inspire monumental change. In the office, life began to shift in subtle but meaningful ways. Policies were rewritten to ensure fair wages and safety. Workers who had once lived in fear now felt seen and valued. The environment became warmer, more collaborative, filled with mutual respect rather than just efficiency. And through it all, Maria continued her work quietly, sweeping floors, dusting desks, and moving with her usual humility. But now, whenever she looked up, she saw smiles and nods of gratitude from people she had never truly known before. One afternoon, Anton called Maria to his office. The room felt different this time, not tense, but warm. He handed her a simple envelope, nothing ostentatious, just a note and a small gift. "For your courage," he said, his voice uncharacteristically soft. Maria's eyes filled with tears. She had never sought recognition, never imagined that her quiet voice could reach someone so powerful. Yet here she was, standing in the presence of a man whose world had changed because she dared to speak. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling, "for listening." Anton smiled, a genuine, unguarded smile. "No, thank you. You reminded me what really matters. Money and power fade, but integrity and compassion last forever." From that day forward, the office became a symbol of hope, showing that even in a world driven by ambition and profit, humanity still had the power to prevail. The story of the cleaning lady who whispered truth to a millionaire became a legend among the workers, a reminder that courage isn't measured by status, but by heart. And as Maria walked through the hallways, broom in hand, she realized something profound. The smallest act of bravery, spoken softly and sincerely, can echo louder than the loudest roar of wealth. Sometimes, all it takes is a whisper to change the world.